I'm going to go ahead and tell you the story of the New Mexico Jeep hunting accident. This happened also in my youth. I was 17, 1967, and actually one of the four of us on the hunting trip did not make it. So it was a very severe accident with some people killed and fairly badly injured, and a few that weren't injured at all, surprisingly. So it was a dove hunting trip out to New Mexico, right on the Texas-New Mexico border, just west of Sunland Park, New Mexico, which is west of El Paso. And there were four of us in this Jeep that was going out there dove hunting in the afternoon of was a Friday afternoon, I believe, that we went out there. And the I won't give the names because they may not want them given at this time of that accident. It did make the El Paso newspaper the following Sunday after we were found the Saturday before, the Saturday of following our Friday hunting accident. So we were, my buddy and I were picked up by another friend of mine and his friend that owned this very high-powered Jeep. He had a big fancy V8 engine in the Jeep, and we were going hunting. And I remember when we stopped by to pick up my buddy at his house, his mom said, "Well, now you all be careful." And we're like, "Okay, yeah, we'll be really careful." So we head out probably about 2 o'clock in the afternoon from central El Paso area and heading out to Sunline Park, New Mexico, and then heading out, I think it was called Strauss Road, heading west along the Texas-New Mexico, not New Mexico, it was actually the New Mexico border west of El Paso, Texas. So it was right where the three came together, Texas, New Mexico, and Mexico. So we're going down this dirt road, which really was right along the border with a fence on the left-hand side of the road, and we were going west. So we got going a little bit fast in this Jeep down this road. And it was kind of a swervy road. It would go straight and then it would curve, and it would curve around big sand dunes as we were heading out there. Well, we approached a sand dune that we needed to curve around, and instead of curving around it, went straight over the sand dune, and the Jeep left the ground and went up and came down right on the front of the bumper, and I think there may have been a tow bar on it, and the Jeep rolled. And probably all of us lost consciousness. I know that I did. And it rolled probably a couple of times. And when I came to, I saw that my left arm had another elbow in it, right in the middle of it, right here. I don't know if you can see the curve, but right here, the arm was broken and was facing up like this with my hand was up here. So the first thing I did was I grabbed my hand. I was freaking out. I didn't know if I was in heaven or hell or still alive, but I grabbed my hand and I pulled it down and straightened out my arm. And I don't know what instinct took over for me to do that, but I did that. And then I started looking around to see what was going on. And my buddy, who was sitting in the back to my right, was fine. Nothing was wrong with him. And the young man who was driving the Jeep, who was a good friend of the other fellow, had taken off and crossed the fence and got into Mexico. And the other fellow, who was sitting in the passenger seat, was lying on the ground with a big hole in his head, and it was very apparent that the Jeep had landed on his head, and he had passed away instantly, we're sure. So I'll tell you a little bit more of it in just a second. I'm going to take a little break. We're going to assume that this accident actually occurred about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe as early as 3:30 in the afternoon. So we had a couple of hours of daylight. So the very first thing we did was to do CPR on the friend who had the hole in his head and appeared to be passed away. But we thought, well, maybe not, so let's try. And my buddy, who was involved or going to be involved in medicine and things like that, knew a lot about it, or pretty much about it, so he administered CPR, and it was pretty obvious after a minute or so that that wasn't going to do any good. So we did determine that he had definitely passed away and that it probably happened immediately. So that that really is the only survival story where one of the people with us did not survive the Jeep accident when I was 17 in New Mexico. So we thought, okay, so where's the other guy? Where's the driver? Oh, well, he took off running and went across the fence, and maybe he had freaked out so much because of what happened to his really good friend, he just lost it, so he was gone. So my buddy and I were there with an overturned Jeep, with me having a broken arm, but thank goodness it wasn't a compound fracture. There was no skin broken, so I wasn't bleeding. And actually, I guess I was in shock because it really didn't hurt that much. And I'm really glad that I pulled my hand to straighten the arm out because it just didn't look so bad that way. It looked pretty scary when it was, at that angle. At any rate, so, okay, what do we need to do? Well, we need to get found. And we may have been 30 miles out of El Paso to the west. There wasn't much near where we were. I think we did know that we were on the Mexico border, and we could see airplanes flying over, and that's all that we saw. So we thought, well, let's see if we can do anything that will help an airplane pilot or passenger to see us. So we first got all the mirrors that we could move and had them pointed up at the sun so that they would reflect upward. Then we got the bright idea of, well, let's make some smoke because the planes will look at the smoke. And I guess we must have had some matches, and obviously we had some gasoline from the Jeep, and we actually burnt the tires to the Jeep to create a large, dark smoke that hopefully an airplane would notice. So we saw a lot of them, or pretty many airplanes go over, but didn't see any response from them, although I guess if someone was looking down on the ground in that area, they certainly would have seen the smoke coming from the burning Jeep tires. We knew that we wouldn't be able to turn the Jeep over, just the two of us, and get it running again. So that's why we went ahead and did that with the tires. Until it got dark. So I guess it probably got dark back, would have been in September. So probably, maybe it was still 8 o'clock, 8:30, because I think we would have still been in daylight savings time. So we still had some fires going, and it was getting dark, and then we started to hear some Mexican voices across the fence on the other side. So obviously there was a ranch or some Mexican ranchers literally in Mexico who saw the fire, may have seen the smoke, and they actually came over and wanted to help us. So we tried to speak English, Spanish as well as we could. They obviously didn't speak English very well, but they saw that there was a problem. They saw the body of our friend, and they knew this was a big thing. So one of them said, well, let's stay here tonight, and let's keep some fires going to keep you warm, and in the morning, one of you guys will come with us and we'll take a drive, we'll walk to the east on the old railroad bed that went right out there, because the cars were now also using the old railroad bed. So I started walking east with one of the Mexican ranchers, and my other buddy was going to stay at the Jeep in case somebody came to find us. So probably by, I think I'd maybe been walking about 30 minutes or so, and it was probably 7:30 in the morning or thereabouts. Hadn't been light too long, maybe an hour. I saw a helicopter flying overhead. And also about that same time, we saw a Border Patrol Jeep coming up from the east to the west on the old railroad bed, and they were out looking for us. So at about the same time that I got found by the Border Patrol people in the Jeep, my buddy got found by the helicopter. So the plan was made that the helicopter would go on and try to land or get the other Border Patrol guys, tell them where it was, and they would go and pick up my buddy, take care of him, and then the other Border Patrol Jeep would go ahead and take me into the hospital. And so we got in, we got phones, or they radioed. Back then, we didn't have cell phones. So they would have radioed back in to tell our families that we had been found and what was going on. So the next thing I remember is my mom meeting us in the hospital. I think we went to Sun Towers Hospital in El Paso, and the doctor said, yeah, you got a pretty bad broken bone, but it looks like everything else is okay, so we're going to need to go ahead and probably do surgery to get your arm fixed so that it will twist right because of the break here. I think you can still see the kind of curve in it. One doctor said, well, it may heal bad and he might not be able to curve his arm, and the other doctor said, well, maybe we just leave it and let it heal naturally. So ultimately it was decided to just leave it to heal naturally, and it did heal fine, and I was okay. That next morning, so that was all Saturday, we got found and got to the hospital. That next morning, Sunday morning, it was the headlines in the El Paso Times that teenagers, one youth killed and teenager in the Jeep rollover in New Mexico desert. So it was the headline of the El Paso Times on that day in September. And actually, I think it may have been September 11th of 1967. And if I find that article, I might see if I can put that on the video. But that was truly another near-death experience that I survived, and having that evening, well, that late afternoon and all of that night and then much of that morning, being stuck out in the desert, not knowing if we were going to be found. Well, I guess we knew we were going to be found eventually, but it was pretty rough experience. And then being there with our buddy that didn't make it for all of that time wasn't good. So that was another accident that I survived, and 2 or 3 of us in the Jeep did survive, and certainly one that my advice would be very careful when you're in these high-powered Jeeps and don't go too fast.